Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Hypersonic 55, and today I'm coming to you with my first film review of 2012, and that comes in the shape of the film Chronicle. Now, Chronicle happened to be one of those sort of films where I saw the trailer beforehand, and I was just like, this film could either go one or two ways. It could either be good and very interesting, or it could really just be bad and very dodgy. I mean, overall, the trailer happened to look pretty interesting, but I was fearing that it might fall into that area of, like, you know, three guys happen to go about and find superpowers and then things go wrong and blah blah blah, and it could fall into that sort of category of generic subpar superhero movies. So as this was my first film of 2012, I was very hesitant and very wary of what I was going to watch when I went in to see Chronicle. Luckily, the film wasn't the train wreck I thought it would be. Chronicle happens to be one of those sort of films that happen to work on a great number of levels. It happens to have a very good script, it happens to have great characters as well. It also happens to have a very interesting story, and it also happens to have some great action sequences and interesting set pieces throughout the entire film. Okay, so let's talk about the story of Chronicle. Most of what you've seen in the trailer is technically what you get in the actual film, but there is so much more to it than that. Basically, you happen to have the story of three guys, Andrew, Matt, and Steve. Except the story is mainly about Andrew. Andrew happens to be a high school kid that happens to be filming his life, and we happen to see the majority of the film take place through his camera. We happen to see that he's a socially awkward guy, doesn't have any friends, and always happens to be, like, you know, bullied at school. And his life at home is not much better when he happens to be abused by his father, and he also happens to have a dying mother, so his life is pretty pants, to be honest. The only person he can look to in terms of a friend is his cousin Matt. At one point during a party where things don't happen to go well for Andrew, we happen to enter our third man, Steve, who says he's found something interesting in the forest that he wants to show Andrew. So Steve and Andrew venture out, find Matt, and then they find a hole in the ground in the forest. They go in, and they happen to find this glowy thing that sort of looks like some sort of crystallized thing from a sci-fi movie, and then bang, cut to another part of the movie, and they happen to have superpowers. And it happens to deal with the nicest of superpowers, telekinesis. So then we see the guys tampering with their powers, seeing how far they can take it, and seeing their powers evolve over time. However, at one point Andrew happens to go about and use his powers in a dodgy way, which then makes the guys take precautions in the way in which they use their powers. And then it's after this point where we see the fluctuations in the way in which these guys use their abilities. But then we see things tend to fluctuate a little bit more for Andrew. His life goes into a bit of disarray at one point, and then he just happens to go rogue, things go bad, and the story of Chronicle then goes down a very dark route, which was definitely surprising in my book. I didn't expect Chronicle to be as dark as it was, and it was definitely an interesting twist in the way in which they happen to use the elements of science fiction and superhero films in the way in which it was done in this film. It feels like a superhero origin story for Andrew, and it is pretty well done in this film. Now, one of the best aspects of Chronicle happens to be the fact that it takes place in a very realistic world. The thing is, with the trio of guys having superpowers and all that, rather than fighting crime or doing anything sort of generic in the superhero genre, they happen to just tamper with their powers, do a little bit of mischief here, there and everywhere, and, you know, just enjoy themselves like most normal guys would. And it was a very refreshing aspect to go about and see in this film. And also, the power that they happen to choose for these guys to obtain was very, very nice. Telekinesis is just one of the most coolest powers ever, and never has it looked so cool in a film up until now. And also, the way in which the filmmakers took the telekinesis aspect and then translated it into a means of flight was just incredible. Everybody's always wanted to fly, and seeing it in this film was invigorating and lovely, and it was done in such a lovely way. And talking about the presentation in the film as well, it was done pretty well. With the use of this found footage technique in the film, it was done to a pretty decent degree, and there were certain similarities to the way in which the camera work was used in Cloverfield in some areas, and obviously the Blair Witch Project as well. And the use of CGI in the film, while a bit questionable in certain areas in terms of realism, for the most part happens to work out pretty darn well. It's very realistic and it's pulled off in a pretty fancy fashion. The actors in the film happen to be pretty darn good as well. The three main cast members who happen to play Matt, Steve and Andrew are really believable, really likeable and very relatable as well. And there is one scene in the movie which I just have to mention happens to have a very, very big similarity to Akira in the film. I won't tell you specifically what it is, but when you see it, and if you've seen Akira, believe me, you'll notice exactly what it is. So in conclusion, Chronicle was a great film. It happened to have a very nice script, brilliant characters, some lovely action set pieces, some good use of CGI and a very realistic story. And I feel that the director, Josh Trank, should be commended for his filming debut. If this is anything to go by, then he happens to have a very bright future. And if he happens to be the man that does happen to helm the next Fantastic Four films, then yeah, game on. I want to see what he does. Anyway, overall, I'd give Chronicle about an 8 out of 10. It's pretty good. Not overly amazing, but it was pretty damn good. Yeah, pretty good. And a pretty good way to start off 2012 as well. Anyway, that has been my review, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you found it informative and look forward to the next one when it shows up. So until the next time, this is the Hypersonic 55 signing out.